AskReddit, when did fake it until you make it backfire? Guy I used to work with told me about when he used to work as an electrician apprentice at a plant. When there was nothing to do, which apparently was most of the time, the lead guy and him would walk out to a random spot in the plant with a ladder, a conduit bender and a bent piece of conduit. Then one of them would stand on top of the ladder and the other on the ground holding the conduit, and they'd just chit-chat all day. If any of the bosses wandered by, they'd nod and pass the piece of conduit up to the guy on the ladder, who would then make a show of trying to fit it in somewhere. Said they both made it through 3 rounds of layoffs doing that. At Nelson Mandela's funeral, people took note of the sign language interpreter that seemed to just be making random hand gestures instead of actual sign language. Turns out he had made quite a few appearances previously and nobody had caught on that he knew literally no sign language. To me, this dude is just the poster child for fake it till you make it. This reminds me of a TIFU post where Op moved to a new neighborhood for just a few months and decided to take some LSD to break it in. Op thought it was a good idea to go for a walk, and when he went outside, his new neighbor greeted him. Being on LSD and a bit of an introvert, he avoided conversation by speaking French as he knew enough to get by and did not plan on staying there for an extended period of time. This went on for about 8 months, longer than he expected to stay there, and eventually the neighbor had a friend of hers over who also spoke French and tried to start up a conversation with him. That's when he was like, "Yeah, I don't speak French. I took orchestra in elementary school and I eventually realized that I was just not going to understand violin. But I still wanted to be in orchestra because it had some perks. So, whenever we had lesson, I put my fingers over the strings and moved my bow around like I meant it. When we had to play individually, I had to do it for real. I thought maybe, by some miracle, I'd get it and play normally. I didn't. Edit. Thanks for the silvers and the upvotes, and thanks for sharing your stories. I was 8 years old and I told my dance teacher I could do a back bend. I couldn't, so she moved me up a level in acro and put me in a special role for our recital. For the next week my mom tried to help me get a back bend, but it wasn't happening and I had to come clean. Luckily she didn't get too mad. I had to move back down a level, but I still got to keep my special role. I had a job that I was way underqualified for, yet I still was surprisingly given the offer. 8 months in, the fact really started to show that I wasn't the assumed genius/savior the hiring manager thought I was. Fortunately, I got offered a different job by someone who wasn't really desperate to hire. Got a job working in an insurance company reviewing contracts. Had no flipping idea what I was doing and thought I could just learn it and I'd be fine eventually. Lasted 6 months and they kicked me out. A few years ago I got a job interview after months of looking. I was desperate. I thought I was going to be working in the mail room for the city, but when I arrived it turned out it was for delivering mail between city offices. Okay, no big deal, I can do that. Well, in my province we have G1, learners, G2, still have some restrictions about when/who you can drive with, and G, full license. Well, I needed my full G for the job but hadn't gotten around to doing the test. No big deal, I thought, I'll just go along and schedule a test ASAP, hopefully before any paperwork needs to be done. So I went through the interview and I think I'm home free, but no. They want to do a driver's test right then and there, and I need to present my license to the testing company. Thinking quick, I tell them I don't have my license on me. Well, they need it and they were willing to find a city employee to drive me back out to my house, /30 minutes away, and get it. Backed into a corner, I finally have to admit that I don't have my G license. I blurted it out and basically ran out of the office and didn't look back. Still one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. I hired a Mandarin translator for a game I'm developing. Ran her translations through Google Translate, to find they were a good match. Too good a match. Showed it to a friend of mine who's from China, told me the translator just Google translated everything and that the end result was barely comprehensible. Okay, I guess it ultimately didn't backfire, but it's a pretty good story I was told in film school eons ago. Back in the 80s/90s, a guy snagged an interview for a camera operating job at a TV production company that was way above his experience level. The interviewer gave him a camera, said okay, take this apart and lay it all out for me. You have 20 minutes, and left him there. After panicking for a minute, he walked down the hall, found a technician working and asked him to take apart the camera for him, which he did. Interviewer comes back, says, good work. Now put it back together, and goes off to put out some other fires. Our guy tracks down the tech, who obliges again, and he was hired. When I heard this story, the guy had worked in the field 15 or so years, so I guess things worked out. Went to visit my older cousin in a big city, small town girl. Before going out, he told me that the friends we would be meeting are super snobby, and would probably make fun of me if I told them I was from small town A. Today I would tell him to get better friends, but when I was 18 I just wanted to fit in. We agree I would tell them I'm from City X. So the blonde bombshell in the group, 6 years older, starts talking to me while my cousin and his friend head off to buy shots. Where are you from? Yum. City X. OMG, me too. She proceeds to ask me which school I went to, which coffee shop was my favorite and where my parents work, just making polite conversation. Of course, I do the adult thing and confess, make up an entire fake life story. My cousin gets back to the table with the shots, and I have never been more grateful for the opportunity to put alcohol in my mouth and stop words from coming out. At seeing me knock back my shot like an animal, my cousin forgets our cover story and loudly proclaims, "Good God. You don't have to drink like you do in small town A, just chill." I did not look at bombshell for the rest of the night. I have seldom wanted the earth to swallow me as much as I did in that moment. The guys who act like they're ex-special forces on the first day of basic training because they were in Drock in high school. I remember one saying, "I've basically already done this every year since I was a freshman," as we got off the bus. Idiot, washed out by week 2. I just heard in a podcast about a guy who lived on an army base for 3 years posing as a soldier until he got caught due to drinking and driving. The guy apparently was well known and went so far as to brief incoming soldiers on and even responded to a bomb threat since he posed as an EOD tech. The guy responds to bomb threats and gets caught because of a DUI. LOL. Got a part-time job as a bartender to help with bills. Told them I knew how to bartend. I can pour a whiskey, coke and beer, so just figured I'd pick up the rest as I went along. First week I was serving to get to know the menu and someone called in sick. Owner makes me bartend. So I'm doing fine, just beers and a few mixed drinks. Then a party of about 40 people coming from a wedding come in and starts asking for all these different shots, different specialty drinks, etc. Totally shut my pants. A writer I know decided he could make easy money writing romance novels under a false name, even though he didn't like romance novels at all. Turns out it wasn't that easy, but he was very good at it and got stuck writing romance novels for a living for a while, hating his job and not having time to write anything he actually wanted to write. I work as an accountant with a theater background. I'm 6 years in and I'm working solo with no one above me in the company besides the owners. I have an audit, a $16 million LOC to acquire, and another company we just purchased. This is the tipping point, I'm sure. Dating a close friend that I wasn't even remotely attracted to. I thought the feelings that I was supposed to have would kick in, but they didn't. I knew a girl who would apply to jobs she was unqualified for, including a job at NASA and at Apple. She lied about her qualifications on her resumes. She landed several high-paying jobs, but would get fired after a month or two once her co-workers realized she did not have the skills to fulfill her duties. She would boast on Facebook about how she landed her dream job every few months. Not sure what she's doing now since I haven't spoken to her in years. I believe she moved to another country. Oh, and she took credit for the Mars rover and for the Beatles on iTunes. When, due to a tight budget on a magazine I edited, way back when, we couldn't afford a fashion correspondent, so I did it myself under an assumed female name, I'm male, and didn't tell anyone. Surprisingly, it was quite well received. Ran for 3 months or so before I got invited to a clothing launch. Orgasms. If you fake it at first, you just never gonna make it. I taught some anatomy and physiology labs to pre-nursing majors. These girls knew more about anatomy and physiology than I did. I'm an expert in ecology, but somehow I got the job of teaching this class. I figured I'd just look at the answers on the worksheets as the semester went on. When I finally got the student feedback, it was a blow to my sense of confidence. About half of them did indeed notice that I had just been looking at the flipping worksheet answers. I struggle remembering names. After first introductions, especially in large groups, I tend to forget them and as a result, just don't use names. It usually works out well until I remember them properly, but sometimes, I'm put in the spotlight and things go south fast. Fire Festival definitely comes to mind. When I thought I was cool enough to eat edibles with no tolerance in Colorado before the airport to go back home. It hit me during the security checkpoint, The pressure behind my eyes began to build. The strange feeling of having to poop traveled from my head to my toes, and at this point I knew I had taken too much. I had sunglasses on, so only having to deal with security for a few moments I was able to get through this with little problems. I had an hour and a half before my plane boarded. My brother met a girl, he also ate edibles but had a tolerance, and was walking around with her while I was too high to function. The terminal was full, no seats anywhere. No problem, I'll just sit awkwardly on the floor the wrong way and stare at these people. Sir, are you okay? One asks. My sunglasses were on, so I pretend to not hear them. Why are you staring at me? The chicken beckons. I realize my sunglasses are minimum shading so they can see my eyes, just staring into them. Sorry, there's nowhere to sit, I manage to say back. My anxiety at this point is through the roof, so I apologize and find somewhere else to lay down in the terminal. I find a spot near the front of the terminal near boarding area / help desk, so if I take a nap I know I'll be woken up by the line that forms / people helping me. There's maybe 50 to 60 people near me, all in the rows of seating, and I position myself legs first at them with my head on my backpack and take a nap. I don't know how long I napped for, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I woke up startled to an extremely loud sound. It sounded like a plane had hit the building from the vibration. Turns out, I had let out the loudest and most pungent fart I've ever had deep out of my insides. I don't move. I have my sunglasses on still and had forgotten the encounter with the chicken earlier, so I act like I'm asleep. I blasted maybe 10 people directly with my fart, and all 10 of them got up and moved immediately. The terminal is shaken up, the laughs are deep, and everyone is looking at me. The cute girls I noticed on my way in are pointing and laughing at me. The airport workers left the stand and are staring at me, talking into their walkie-talkies, laughing. I didn't move until the plane boarded, and in line everyone was still talking about it, and the staff couldn't look me in the face when I had to go through the desk with my ticket. DR edibles made me an idiot, and I cleared a row of terminal seating with a pungest gas blast while pretending to be asleep. Edit. Thank you kind strangers for the gold/silver. Also, I meant to say chicken and not chicks because it's just what was going on in my head at the time. Yeah, no, edibles are wild. I was in a Skype job interview that involved multiple rounds. In one session I talked to person A, then person B, and then person C. During the interview with person B, I was asked to talk about one of my weaknesses. After having already talked about one of my strengths, I explained that I'm very comfortable with creative problem solving, but sometimes I take for granted that the status quo exists for a reason. Person B responded, I see your point, but I don't think that's a problem in the grand scheme of things. You seem very entrepreneurial to me, and people with that motivation have a healthy skepticism for how things have to be. That was a pleasant thing to hear, especially in an industry that involves bringing in new business and keeping clients. I thanked person B and told him I'd never thought of myself as entrepreneurial, but there was something that felt true about that description. Cut to my interview with person C. First question, what are some words that people might use to describe you? Well, one thing I've been told is that I am entrepreneurial. I am less of a leader and more of a collaborator. I value creativity, blah blah blah. Person C, so, Kim and Ub, you said you're entrepreneurial, what businesses have you started? Might as well have quit at that point once I said none. Nothing I said to person C was going to convince him I wasn't full of shit. Edit, to be clear, I told person C several projects I've started that involved personal initiative, taking risks, and making proposals to people with the power to deny my idea or be a part of my team. The problem he seemed to have was that none of those things was literally a business. Tried to power my way through undiagnosed PTSD. I got 100x worse. Real recovery does require you to face the difficult situations, but in a specific way. Trying to force yourself to get over it will convince your subconscious that the thing is indeed bad. On the flip side, laughter yoga is the most effective fake it until you make it I've ever encountered. Pretending to laugh until you feel so ridiculous you really do laugh. Pretty much an instant mood boost. I once talked my way into an internship with a neuroscience lab that regularly implanted devices into monkeys' brains as an undergraduate. Luckily this did not result in any dead monkeys, as I had only been brought on to help process their data. However, the issue was that they were using MATLAB and I had vastly overplayed a basic understanding of Python gleaned from a side project on algorithms back in high school. They also simultaneously tried to give a crash course in neuroscience to little old freshman me, so I could be vaguely familiar with the data I was working with. Fun fact, brain surgery is not easy to learn. Yeah, I was politely asked to leave after about 2 or 3 months of banging my head against the wall. Pretty sure I wasn't able to contribute a single line of code or useful data analysis to their project. I did get a cool ceramic monkey mug out of it though, which was nice. Faked being depressed when I was in middle school to fit in with some emo kids or whatever, and now at the age of 24 I am cripplingly depressed. Not my story, but a senior back in my high school used to talk about how tough he was and how he was a black belt in karate and had plenty of boxing experience. He even brought his black belt, which I'm convinced wasn't actually his, to school one day to show it off. He eventually got the reputation of someone who was not to be flipped with. He was a beefy guy, sort of a meathead. Anyhow, fast forward a bit and he was having a heated argument with the sophomore in the hallway. People were gathering all around to watch the drama unfold. Things escalate, and he pushes the sophomore kid hard. The sophomore immediately responds with a punch square to the senior guy's nose. He drops like a sack of potatoes. And then this black belt karate expert starts flipping, crying. I would like to tell you that this was the end of the fight. But it wasn't. He gets back up, blood dripping from his nose, and swings at the sophomore with quite possibly the worst punch I'd ever seen. Tears and blood are dripping off his face as he's throwing some huge toddler tantrum, just swinging his arms like a windmill and missing every punch. Some teachers came and broke up the fight and both of them got suspended. The guy never bragged about his fighting experience again after that and sort of flew under the radar for the rest of the year. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen is that you do make it. Because when you do fake it to make it, you still have to fake it to keep it. I'm still in the same career field, faking that I care about numbers and competition and wearing nice clothes. Advice to me younger self: if you have to fake it till you make it, you don't want to make it. So I am sort of in this situation now. I know how to do my specific job, but due to me being hired late and getting thrown into the job, I didn't really onboard correctly with the company I actually work for. I work in outreach, so I'm offsite 10 months/year. Well, my boss resigned last week and now I'm in limbo cause I have been there long enough where I should know where things are and who is who and how things run, but I know nothing and just sort of kept to myself and did my own thing while on site. I'm slightly worried that now that I don't have a direct boss, that if I am told to do something I will have no clue how to do it. Not exactly my fault because of the situation, but I foresee an awkward conversation in my future. Worked with a successful guy whose reputation was he spends 50% of his time on the job working on his old job, and 50% on his next job. Was true. Unfortunately, he piloted his plane into a set of power lines. When someone asks if I've seen a movie and I lie and say yes to fit in. When they ask for my favorite part or my opinion on a part, I'm exposed. Not me, but it backfires all the time in MLM/pyramid schemes. They actually tell you to fake it till you make it, but no matter how many times you lie on social media about being a #boss babe, you will never make it. That I was relaxed and chill with being a dad. When he came out, I died a little inside and did not know what to do. It eventually worked out when I lost my job and became a stay-at-home dad for 3 months, and now that boy loves me more than his mom. How does that backfire? I can't take a shot alone. My 2-year-old has to be in there like a flipping air marshal and his prisoner. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more top AskReddit posts read out loud.